You would be forgiven if you didn't even know that this movie hit theaters this weekend. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel, and this is my review for the new Western, The Kid. This film stars Ethan Hawke, Dane DeHaan, and Chris Pratt, and it is directed by Vincent D'Onofrio. This film centers around a young boy named Rio, who, after finding his father beating to death his mother, he shoots his father and is on the run with his sister Sarah from the treachery of their evil uncle, Grant, played by Chris Pratt, who wants to kill them both. They run away, and eventually they end up in the same path with Billy, the kid, who is also on the run from his treacherous crimes. A lot of people probably didn't even know that this movie was coming out. This movie wasn't highly marketed. I didn't even know that this movie was coming out until about a week and a half ago. And with the cast of Dane DeHaan, Chris Pratt, Ethan Hawke, I was like, I gotta see this movie. I love this cast. I love Chris Pratt. I really love Dane DeHaan. The dude is so talented. I have to see this movie. And I gotta say, this movie is very disappointing. For a Western film, it's very generic. It brought nothing new to the table, and it is a very paint-by-numbers Western. What I mean by paint-by-numbers is that it is a film that has your typical Billy the Kid-esque character. In this film, you actually have Billy the Kid, played by Dane DeHaan, who does a fantastic job, by the way. His performance was great. It was probably the standout of the film, to be honest, with Dane DeHaan's performance as Billy the Kid. But you also always have in these Western films, you know, a shootout. You always have some type of central conflict that is happening when it comes to like a runaway, or these cowboys or like rebels basically trying to fight for a cause and trying to run away from their problems. So it's pretty much a paint-by-numbers Western film. And Vincent D'Onofrio, his directorial debut, I believe, is this film, and it wasn't very good. I had an enjoyable time for the most part. I felt like the problems of this movie were definitely outweighed the good things about this movie, but I felt like there's enough substance here where it's a serviceable film that you can actually get enjoyment out of it. I want to talk about the positives first. The first thing, like I said, Dane DeHaan gives an amazing performance as Billy the Kid. He really carried a lot of the film, especially the dull parts of the film. He brought that celebrity-esque status of Billy the Kid. Like, he brought that out of this character, which I really liked. Chris Pratt's character, Grant, wow, completely different from anything Chris Pratt has ever played. I actually didn't realize it was Chris Pratt in the first scene. Then afterwards, I was like, wait a second, that is Chris Pratt. He has a huge beard in this movie, he talks different, and he is very different from any other Chris Pratt type of character we've seen before in feature films. But I thought he was really good in this film. However, he's not in the movie that much. He's in probably like 4 or 5 scenes. He shows up in the beginning of the movie for the first little bit, and then you don't see him until midway through the second act. The only thing I don't like about his character, not Chris Pratt's portrayal, Chris Pratt was great, but the character of Grant was just so weird, because after he finds Rio shot his brother, which was Rio's dad, he is so angry that he wants to kill both Rio and Sarah, and then he, later on in the film, midway through the second act, he finds them and then says, you know what, I'm going to make your sister my whore because your mom was a whore. So he takes Sarah and literally has sex with her, I guess. He doesn't kill Rio. So that didn't really make a lot of sense. Another thing that I actually really liked about this film was the color grading. It was very gritty. It had a very great saturation of color, which made it look like an actual Western. It had that feel of a Western, and it felt very dirty, which I really like when it comes to Westerns like this. It just showed kind of also the nature of what is going on within the world and within the scope. However, those are pretty much my only positives. Negatives, I have quite a bit of them. The first one is the pacing. This movie had a lot of pacing issues. From the start all the way to the end, it didn't really know what it wanted to accomplish, and it felt like the movie was edited in a way where it just felt longer than what it should be and what the runtime said. So the pacing was just all over the place. And I noticed it from the beginning of the film all the way to the end. And there's also a lot of scenes that are kind of like cut at certain points that it doesn't really make sense why certain characters would be at a certain place. Characters would do a certain thing at a certain time, which wouldn't really make sense because 5 minutes earlier they wouldn't necessarily make that same decision. So some of that didn't really add up, and just some things just were cut really quickly as well. So it's like they got from point A to point B, and there was no explanation of how they got to point B. That's the biggest problem with the film. Another big issue that I have with this movie is a movie supposedly about Billy the Kid, but he's really in the background. This is really about the story of Rio. And Billy the Kid, the movie is named The Kid, and I think it's named after Rio technically, but they play off of the idea of Billy the Kid is going to be a central figure in the movie, but yet he's kind of a second-hand character. He's kind of more in the background, just kind of being brought into the elements as opposed to the elements kind of being brought upon him. He is kind of brought into the situation. And the last big negative for me about this film is that this film, every time that it had a climactic moment or a monumental moment in the film, it just didn't feel like it really mattered. It felt like the issues, everything that they were building up to, when it actually happened, the payoff wasn't there. And there's one scene in particular, I'm not going to go into spoiler territory, but one character gets killed off, and you would think that it's such a monumental moment and that they would feel that emotional strength of that particular scene, but it's kind of not important, and it kind of feels almost forgotten in a way, that it's like you kind of think 5 minutes down the road like, oh yeah, that's right, that character did die. This film, you don't really need to see it. I would not recommend watching this film. It was honestly just 2 hours wasted of my time, and it had some moments that were okay. I'm not going to say it's the worst movie of the year. It's not Prodigy bad, but it's one of those movies that is just very forgettable and I will never watch again. Anyway guys, what are your thoughts? Let me know below on The Kid. Make sure you like this video. Also, follow me on Letterboxd and subscribe to my YouTube channel as I post content like this all the time. Anyway guys, as always, I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.